Good evening. I'm Rebecca Hawthorne, President of the League of Women Voters, Wayzata-Plymouth area. I'd like to welcome our candidates, our audience, and our viewers on behalf of our host, the League of Women Voters, Wayzata-Plymouth area. The League of Women Voters is a 104-year-old volunteer nonpartisan organization that encourages the informed and active participation of citizens in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidate. The views expressed in this forum this evening are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. It is our purpose in sponsoring forums such as this to provide you with an opportunity to hear candidates discuss face-to-face the issues that are important to you. This is a nonpartisan forum. No campaign buttons or campaign t-shirts are to be worn or signs or literature distributed in this room. Please silence your electronic devices this evening, and a reminder there is no photography or recording in this room. And now I'd like to introduce you to your moderator for this evening's forum, William Johnson of Plymouth, and a League of Women Voters Wayzata-Plymouth area member.
Thank you. Good evening. Tonight's forum is provided to give you the opportunity to learn about the candidates running for an Orono mayor and city council. There's never enough time to cover all of the issues in a setting such as this. If your questions were not addressed, feel free to contact the candidate directly. The League of Women Voters posts complete unedited recordings of forums. Editing is authorized only for official media reporting. Excerpts or edited clips of candidate forums may not be used for partisan political purposes. The rules for this evening's forum are as follows. The candidates will be allowed an opening statement with a maximum of 1 minute to state their experiences, platform, and objectives. A question and answer period will follow the opening statements. The answers will be confined to 1 minute unless otherwise designated by the moderator. Opening statements will be given in alphabetical order by office being sought, and questions will be answered in a rotating order. A 15-second warning will be given to the candidates. Candidates, please finish your sentence quickly when you see the stop sign, or you will be interrupted. The candidates will also be given a 2-minute closing. No reference of a personal nature will be tolerated. A person's public record may be examined, but not their character. This forum is made available to encourage the voting public to focus on issues and not on personalities. We ask that there be no demonstrations in support or opposition to the candidates or their positions, and that each candidate be allowed their full time to get their points across. The public has been encouraged to submit questions online in advance of this forum. For those in the audience, if you have a question, write it on a 3x5 card available from our volunteers and raise your hand to have it picked up. Audience questions will be taken for the first 30 minutes of the forum. The timekeeper will alert the moderator when 30 minutes has elapsed. At that time, we won't take any additional questions. Questions that are unclear, hostile, or of a personal nature will not be used. Those that fall in the same general area may be consolidated, because we've already gotten a lot of questions online. The candidates running for Orono Mayor are Bob Tunheim and Dennis Walsh. The candidates who have filed for 2 seats on the Orono City Council are StevePersian, Jacqueline Ricks, John Schwingler, Maria Veach, and Scott Wellman. City Council candidate John Schwingler has notified the League of Women Voters Wayzata-Plymouth area that he will not be participating in this forum and will not be running for the Orono City Council. As stated in our candidate participation policy, we will proceed with the mayoral candidates and the City Council candidates. All right, we will begin with candidates for mayor to give their opening remarks, beginning with Bob Tunheim.
Hello, I'm Bob Tunheim, and I'm running for mayor of Orono. Quite frankly, I never thought I would utter that phrase, but here we go. I have no hidden agenda in running for mayor, no local business entanglements, nothing to gain personally from running. I'm running because I love this community that has been our home for over 27 years, where we've raised our family, where our son is raising his family, where we've made wonderful friends and have absolutely loved everything there is to love about Orono. But I'm deeply concerned about our current city government's lack of civility and accountability, the absence of fiscal responsibility, rapidly escalating taxes, and public safety. With the encouragement and support of a number of people that I greatly respect, I'm ready to use my skills and background as a business lawyer, veteran board member, and active community leader to get this city I love back on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Hi, I'm Dennis Walsh, and I'm running for a re-election for Orono Mayor. I have brought 40 years of business experience and nonprofit experience to the city 10 years ago. And when I got into the city 10 years ago, we were a tad in the dark ages. We had no technology in Orono. We had no funding for roads and parks. Our roads were a mess. Our parks were unkept. We had no money for roads and infrastructure and everything else, and we were essentially broke. I promised back then to make sure to get us fully budgeted without increasing our tax rate. And that's a promise I made and a promise that I've kept. We are fully funded in all of our city businesses and our divisions. And part of that, we expanded our tax base by simplifying the codes at Orono. We brought yes back to Orono back then. So now the developers, it's a lot easier to get permits, to build new houses, to divide stuff. And Orono is the beacon of light at the top of the hill that shows how it can be done. You pay half the taxes in Orono as you do in your surrounding cities to your city government, and we will continue that with 4 more years under my leadership. Thank you.
Thank you. Now candidates for City Council, beginning with StevePersian.
Hi, my name is Steve Persian. Just a little bit about myself, born and raised in the western suburbs. In 1989, my wife and I were married and moved out to Long Lake, where we started to raise a family. In 2004, we moved to Hunt Farm Road in Orono. I've had a 30-year plus, nearly 30-year career with Target, with various leadership roles. In addition to that, I served on the Long Lake Fire Department for 14 years, and 4 of those years were as fire chief. In addition to that, I decided to coach high school girls hockey, which is interesting in of itself. So, full disclosure, like Bob, I didn't see myself running for council, and I have nothing to gain in doing that. But I felt compelled, based upon what I've observed over the last 2 to 3 years, specifically around fiscal responsibility, community interaction, and fire services, that I felt it was important to run. So,
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline Ricks. My husband Michael and I moved our family to Orono in 2000. We chose Orono because of the great schools, as we have a son with special needs and another son with severe ADHD. I was told about some of the things that Orono was doing for my mother. I was raised in Matamita, and she was reading about it in the St. Paul paper. I was pretty shocked by it, especially the lack of civility in the meetings that the council was holding. I found a lack of transparency to be wanting, and I found that what's going on with the dual fire departments is, I guess in my opinion, fiscally irresponsible. So I'd like to be able to join the council and see what I can do, what kind of recourse there is for the fire department, see if we can bring civility back to our meetings and try to make things fiscally responsible again. Thanks.
Thank you. Now, Maria Veach.
First, I'd like to thank the league, all those in attendance and those watching at home, and also those sitting on the panel with me for your engagement in our community. I'm Maria Veach. I'm a wife, a mother, a business owner, an Orono graduate, and a councilwoman, as well as an active community volunteer. I want to continue investing in this great city for my family and my community for generations to come. As a wife of a lieutenant serving on both Long Lake and Orono Fire, I understand the importance of public safety As a business owner, I know firsthand how to maintain a budget and plan for the future. Finally, as someone who has actively volunteered in countless community groups over the years, I'm aware of the values that unite us and the vision we share for the future. By bringing my experience, I'm confident together we can continue to nurture the roots of the past and seek solutions for our future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Scott Wellman.
Thank you for the opportunity. Why am I running? The primary reason is service. My parents were both in the military, and they taught me over and over again that the right name for that is the service. Now, I could not qualify for that, so I looked for other ways. Why now? Both of my daughters just left us. They went out to college, and so now there's an opportunity. Why this opportunity? I currently work in cybersecurity, which is full of daily challenges and competing interests. It's fundamentally about balancing safety and providing services. And granted, it's a different kind of safety and service, but the concepts are similar. I've worked in management and bid prep. Again, similar to the purpose of City Council. And when I looked at the options and looked at there was an opening on the City Council, I thought it was a good fit.
Thank you. All right, I'll now start the questions, and you will be answering in a rotating order. You will have 1 minute. Please remember to speak into your microphone, and if at any point you need a question repeated, feel free to ask me. All right, the first question, and it'll go first to Scott Wellman. How will you, if elected, address the reputation Orono has developed, as noted by the Minneapolis Star and Tribune editorial staff, for acrimony, friction, and a lack of transparency? Scott Wellman.
Well, I would like to explore the character of Orono as described in the comprehensive city plan. And the character talks about two personalities, a rural and an urban personality. I would like to say, well, how is that being reflected in the city council meetings? I think there's some room for improvement. I think I could take a number of themes and skills that I've learned at work and apply those, suggest experiments in getting more public input, and figure out forums, perhaps like this, where residents can ask questions and get answers.
All right, thank you. StevePersian.
So from my perspective, the truth is it's embarrassing what we're reading about in the Star Tribune. And it's gone on several times. And the truth is, if I get elected, one of the things that I'm going to try and work to do is bring back, positive interaction amongst the council members, amongst families that stand up and talk, amongst people that, and just individual citizens. Because the way that I have observed interactions between people that are speaking at the end of meetings and public comment, and the way that the council reacts to that, in addition to the way that the council reacts to other council members, is just wrong. And you're gonna hear people talk about civility. I'm gonna talk about just being kind and nice. And the truth is, what's taking place isn't kind and nice, and it needs to come back to the city of Orono.
All right, thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yeah, I think it is embarrassing to read about our city in the Star Tribune. It's been several articles now, including the editorial page. And I think it's not that difficult to change that civility. It's just a question of whether we as public officials are willing to listen, really listen to the concerns that people have. You don't have to agree with everything we do. We don't have to agree with everything that is said, but we have to treat each other with mutual respect. Everybody deserves to be listened to, and everybody deserves to have a civil engagement on issues that are important to all of us. So that is really job one, if I'm elected mayor, to change the civility that's reflected in our city council. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
Thank you. Well, I believe there is work to be done. I am proud to be a part of this city and proud to be a part of the future. I'll draw on my community connections established from deep-rooted engagement over the years to provide and foster open dialogue. I'll use logic-based approach and decision-making, focusing on the facts and benchmarking made by topic experts. I'll collaborate with staff and allow proper time for city staff to thoughtfully research my questions so we can make informed decisions during our council meetings and avoid gotcha moments. I'll continue to reach out to diverse viewpoints and increase my understanding to guide my decision-making. My efforts to create a full-time communications position in the city starting in 2025 are a direct result of my commitment to improving dialogue between residents and between different viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, I must admit, I don't get the Star Tribune. I didn't realize they're still in business. But from a civility standpoint, we don't have any civility problem at the council. What we have is civility problem in the audience, and the majority of the people who are causing these non-civility issues are not even residents. But you know, the one thing that it does point out is that I am a proponent of free speech. And I let people come up, no matter how crude or rude or foul language they come up, it's my job to still listen, and we've never shut that down. The school board actually shut down public comment when the times got tough and moved them to closed door listening sessions that isn't recorded. I gotta tell you, so that's the two big things that you can look at. Free speech on one hand, curtailed free speech on the other hand. I think it's rather clear what the choice is. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I guess I have to say that I'm a little surprised by what I'm hearing, because we've watched the videos on YouTube of what these meetings look like. It's contentious, it's embarrassing. I think it's very easy to ask people if they do come in with foul language to ask them to refrain. I think it's important to have people be able to speak at the beginning of a meeting and before a decision is made, rather than after the decision has been made and being told that the decision's done and they can move on to something else. I think it's ridiculous to sit here and think that everything is okay in the council meetings. It's embarrassing. And I think it has to change. And I think with a new group of people who actually believe in being kind and listening and showing respect, that can happen quite easily.
Thank you. All right, second question. What is your top priority for Orono as a candidate for either mayor or city council, and how would you address it if elected? And we'll begin with Jacqueline Ricks.
I would say my top priority, besides having a non-contentious meeting, is to look at what's happening with the dual fire departments. I think that a lot of families have had to deal with a lot of things that they shouldn't have had to deal with. The breaking up of relationships, having to choose sides, having to take flack sometimes from half the population that doesn't agree with them and half the population that does. I think it's fiscally irresponsible to have two departments, and I think that it brings to mind that safety should be our #1 issue with the fire department, and I think that is not what's being looked at. I think we really have to pay attention and try to fix the questions with the departments.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Can you repeat the question again?
Sure, thank you. What is your top priority for Orono as a candidate for mayor or city council? Mayor, in your case, how would you address it if elected?
Well, back 10 years ago, my main goal was to make sure we got Orono in financial shape. And we today are the best shape we have ever been. Our roads are completed, all of our infrastructure is paid for. We don't go and assess anybody when we do your roads or your water or infrastructure, because it's in our budget. Because you should build a budget for things that you can plan for. And that's what we have done. And from a fire department standpoint, there's a contract that's coming due that we've talked for 6 years to Long Lake without any getting anywhere. And as a good businessman and a good council, we have planned ahead to make sure that our citizens make sure they're taken care of and protected. And we had to take the steps to put all those things in place. The model has changed. 75% of our calls are medical these days, and that's different. I'm the youngest boomer at 60, so things change, models change. And so we're about best practices with our 100 employees we have in Orono to make sure we get this done with our fully staffed finance, HR, and everything else, just like we do with our police department. So, thank you.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yes, although we've already talked a little bit about this, I think our top priority needs to be restoring civility. We've talked about civility in the meetings, but I think this lack of civility is also harming our relationships with our neighbors. The Northwest Hennepin League of Municipalities actually went so far as to amend their bylaws to kick Orono out because our current mayor was being so disruptive at their meetings. We should be a leader, not just in council meetings, but people that want to work with us. And I think this spills over into our reaction to the fire department. We need to be getting along with our neighbors so that we can collaborate and work together to provide the needed services for our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, my top priority in becoming a council member would be to address the fire services. And I think what's transpired over the course of the last 2 years is not an effective model. And to go ahead and spin up your own independent Orono Fire Department, to me is nonsense, and it's irresponsible spending. I think that we have been in partnership with the City of Long Lake for over 100 years. Every time I've heard council members talk about the service, they've talked about the fact that at the very least, it met expectations, and in many cases, far exceeded what we were looking for fire services. In recent years, the city leadership has decided to start their own. With that comes a great deal of expense. I think that we need to restore our relationship and rebuild trust with the City of Long Lake and get back to where we have a fire district concept. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
My top priority would be to listen and learn and then act in the best interest of Orono residents. I've already mentioned it, but there are a number of contentious issues and a lot of questions. And I just don't see enough forums, enough paths, enough back and forth. I see repeats, I see some blockades, sometimes the same people asking the same questions over and over again. I would like to solve that. I would like to go back to active listening and establish a way that the city council can actively listen and get more public input before going on.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
Thank you. I think similar to what Bob and Scott had said, I think civility is important in communication. I think civility can be addressed through communication. I recognize the need to enhance communication, and I've been working since I've been on council to make significant improvements towards that. Yes, the work is slow, but we've been trying to make our meetings more accessible by introducing informational brochures designed to guide residents who might feel intimidated by the process to encourage civic engagement. The brochures are available, offering clear explanations on how to engage with local government and have your voices heard. In addition, I'm pleased to announce with the work of our communications committee that starting in 2025, we'll have a full-time staff position working for communications department. This role will be dedicated to make sure the flow from staff to council to our citizens stays true, avoiding these hostile moments. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, third question. As mayor or a council member, you influence land use decisions, both with respect to specific developments and with larger policy decisions on how land will be held back from or slated for future development. How will you deal with conflicts of interest that arise in decision-making? Maria Veach.
So land use is something that we do frequently on city council. We plan to manage growth in Orono by carefully balancing development with our community's unique character. That means supporting responsible growth that aligns with our long-term vision, zoning, and land use policies that protect our natural space and small town feel. Thoughtful planning and community input will help guide our decision-making and maintain what makes Orono special. Ensuring zoning regulations are easy to understand will help ensure that we maintain our character for years to come. We have a great foundation and we'll build on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure. As mayor or council member, you influence land use decisions both with respect to specific developments and with larger policy decisions on how land will be held back from or slated for future development. How will you deal with conflicts and interests that arise in that decision-making process?
I think we should use the 20-year comprehensive plan as a guide. I very much like that whole process and the document. It talks about, when I mentioned those two personalities, the need to pick quality over quantity, the need to be thoughtful about water use and impact on the watershed, and ask a lot of questions. None of these can be rushed, and because once you make a change to land, you rarely get it back. So timely discussion and lots of input.
All right, thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I'd have to say that we have to look at what we've done in the past. I think a lot of people that moved to Orono years ago have felt that there's been a lot of changes without a lot of public input. Variances have been manipulated, and some people that go to try to do a development nowadays feel like they can't even start a project because of the fact that there's intimidation from the council. I have talked to a few people who told me that they didn't want to bring their projects in front of the council right now because of intimidation and fear. I would agree with Scott. I like asking a lot of questions and looking at a 20-year comprehensive plan, but even those plans, I think that we have to have public input. And I feel that's really been lacking with the council recently.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yeah, I think conflicts of interest is a serious problem in Orono, where we've seen city property given to public officials. Beyond being an ethical problem, I believe it's a legal problem as well. And I would simply not allow anything of this nature as your mayor. We need to, as public officials, we need to be above the fray. And as I was talking with a former mayor, he said he waited until he was no longer in office to build his deck. And I told that to my wife and said, we better dial back on those plans if I'm elected mayor. But that's important. It's important to set the tone and be above any sort of ethical decision-making that impacts a project. The other thing we need to do is pay very close attention to Lake Minnetonka, the quality of the water, development along Lake Minnetonka. It is our crown jewel of our community, and we just need to protect it by whatever means we can. Thank you.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, I think a lot of things have been said that make a lot of sense. I think the conflict of interest is something that we can't have council members and we can't have we need to be above reproach. And when there's situations that come up, we just simply need to not be allowed to be a part of a decision that is directly affects us. In addition to that, I think many people live out in Orono because of the way that we protect nature. And oftentimes we've seen some of that compromised for no very good reason. And so I believe that one of the things that we need to do is really leverage the professionals that work for the City of Orono. And I think that they oftentimes will provide very good guidance to us on how we should proceed with things. That being said, we need to do what we can do to help our citizens achieve their goals. So that's what I'm doing.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
You know, one of the biggest things I heard 10 years ago is people wanted Orono to stay the way Orono was. And in those 10 years, we've not increased any density, we haven't increased any height. And if you're a developer who wants to come and change your density and double it up and increase heights, you should be scared because the answer is going to be no. Because we've told them from day one. We have held that line, we've held it well, we have kept Orono the Orono way. There are no conflicts, there's no legal issues. Everybody gets treated the same. You just have to follow the rules. If you follow the rules, we will look at everything independently. I'm the guy that will come out to your yard and walk your yard, and I see a few of your people in here that I have walked your yard to help figure out what problems you have and how we solve it in Orono, because there's a lot of nuances to our codes with all the water that we have. We have great staff, and they're the ones who have helped us draft all these codes. When they see all the things that come in and say, these are the things we're experiencing all the time that we need to solve because there's too many of them and they don't make sense, and we solve all those codes. That's why we had a code review committee with lots of different people in the community, and we solved our codes to bring yes back to Orono.
Thank you. All right, question 4. What do you see as the greatest challenge to starting and/or growing a business in Orono? What, if anything, should be the role of city government? What the role of city government be in supporting businesses? StevePersian.
Well, I think as we get organizations that want to come into the city and start a business, I think we need to do everything we can do to enable them to do that. And so, in part, we need to make sure that the type of business that they're looking to start makes sense and it fits our community. But I think that we have an obligation to work with that business owner to do whatever we can to help them out. And so, if that were the case, I think that, you know, I would work with council to try and figure out ways to help that business out if they came into the community.
All right, thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, as everybody knows, we're 95% residential, so we don't have a lot of commercial in our businesses. But I will tell you a good example of supporting businesses, which is what we've done in Orono. During COVID, we went and helped the Narrows and the Lake Room expand their outside and changed our code because we don't have a lot of restaurants to deal with those issues, but we want to make sure they stayed in business, kept in business. We've had numbers of grand openings that we've gone to make sure that they are known far and wide. When we have a number of city projects that we've done, like our tree lighting, we get lots of public-private partnerships with our grocery stores and the Lions, and we bring people in to make sure that we go local all the time. And so those are probably the best examples of helping people directly, and we've done it firsthand. Like I say, it's not bragging if you've done it. Thanks.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
I love this question. As a business owner, I've looked for land in many of cities. I think the hardest and most challenging part of finding something in Orono would be finding land. As Denny had said, we're mostly a residential community with a small area of the business district in the Navarre area. What I can tell you is if you do find a place in Orono, that we have great infrastructure in place. We funded our roads, our sewer, our water. So not only are we keeping up, we're keeping ahead to make sure that your city is doing the work you need to keep your business open. We've invested in the parking lot in the Navarre area, bringing more people to be able to come and visit local opportunities and local businesses. So I think the challenge would be finding something, but I think if you found a place that you were able to open your business, you'd find a great home here in Orono. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
I think I'll focus on what role city council would have for the land. That was part of the question, yes?
Yeah, it's, what is the greatest challenge to starting or growing a business in Orono? What, if anything, should be the role of city government in supporting businesses?
Well, in Orono, I think the role of city government for supporting businesses has to be balanced with the role of keeping what we have already and not putting that in danger. I mentioned once you get rid of land, it's gone. We're not making more of it. And I, for one, enjoy the parks. I enjoy passive open spaces. How that's balanced with the economic needs and new businesses is a challenge and is difficult. So whatever is decided, and I might sound repetitious, but it has to be approached with questions and asked, if we build this, if we're supporting this, what are we losing? And because every move forward is a loss somewhere else.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yes, as has been mentioned, we have very little commercial space in Orono, mainly in the Navarre area, and there's still some empty storefronts there. So I think there are ways that we can encourage businesses to locate to Orono. And one of the things that we can do as a board is make sure that our ordinances that impact businesses and our regulations that impact businesses are applied fairly and evenly, and are really used to encourage commercial development particularly in those empty storefronts, because there's always space that's there. So it really needs to we need to do all we can to occupy those, to encourage folks to occupy those spaces. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I would say that we'd have to look at the business first and see if it would be a fit in Orono. Obviously, there isn't a lot of space, as it's already been mentioned. That doesn't mean that there can't be some other businesses to open. And I guess if somebody was coming to us as a council and needed some help or guidance, that we would be able to maybe talk through that with them and help them out in ways that the government is able to. We can encourage people to come in and stuff. I agree with Bob, there are some storefronts in Navarre, but as Denny and Maria mentioned, we are majority a residential area, and there isn't a lot of land without starting to change zoning and taking a look at what would change the real face of Orono.
Thank you. Or as Will Rogers once said, buy land, they're not making any more of it. So. All right, question 5, fire safety. There's been a national trend in fire safety to share services among communities, which neighboring city Long Lake and Orono have been doing for many years. What are your views on the recent decision of the Orono City Council to establish their own fire department? And what do you see as the next steps? Jacqueline Ricks.
I do not agree that we should have started our own fire department. I really love the idea of a fire district. I think that we have been working with Long Lake for many, many years. I've read this from 1915. I do understand that there are issues, and I think that going to the table and trying to talk through them and negotiating them would be a much better plan than starting our own fire department. It's fiscally irresponsible. A new fire department costs millions and millions of dollars. And we have buildings, we have fire trucks. I know that things have already been purchased, but I think that those trucks can be used for both of the companies, but I really think it has to be brought back into one.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, similar to what Jacqueline said, I'm 100% opposed to an independent Orono Fire Department serving solely Orono. It doesn't make any sense to me. I think that over the course of the 100 years that I mentioned before, we've had a great level of service. In recent years, when they decided to go separately, what we've started to realize is that has damaged the culture of the Long Lake Fire Department. And that's from the messaging of firefighters talking to us at coffee, that the relationship that they have among themselves has been strained, to put it lightly. And I think that having that carry over is just a negative effect. I also think that the expense associated with an independent Orono Fire Department doesn't make sense, because the numbers just don't work from a business standpoint at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
The 20-year comprehensive plan of Orono wasn't written all that many years ago, and it has a very clear statement about the future of fire services and contracting with Long Lake. Now, jump to the present, there's been a dramatic shift, and on one hand, a number of people have worked extremely hard to establish the OFD, to get it running, to provide service. And on the other hand, there's a lot of people with questions. That's not to say there hasn't been some public feedback, but it seems to me that there's a need for a bridge between those two groups before we move into the future. Maybe there are things that have been learned in the last couple of years, but there's a lot of questions And maybe we can have, like I said, a forum like this, so we can circle back and see where we were and how we got here before making final decisions to go forward.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
I'm open to continually exploring all partnerships and all city programs because collaboration can lead to cost savings and efficiencies while also building community. While I'm in favor of many aspects of our current expiring contract with Long Lake, particularly the shared services, I believe changes to operational management are necessary to address the evolving needs. Partnerships should be adaptive, ensuring they meet the needs of Orono for the challenges we face now and in the future. I don't have enough time to thoughtfully answer this question on this very complex issue, but you can read more about my thoughts on my Facebook page from a post that I posted in April 26th of this year. In this small community, many of us are personally connected to fire service and the services we rely on. My priority is what's best for our community, long-term, as a whole. And I approach this topic with that in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
I agree with Maria on everything she said, and also that there's not enough time to talk about this, but Orono is 87% of the contract, and just for free facts, Long Lake is 6%. And we've been trying to talk to them for 6 years, and they said they won't really work with us unless they can have veto power over everything that we do. Well, for 6%, that's called a service contract. That's not called a veto contract. And we've still to this day, just even in July, offered them free fire service for 20 years, which they said they're not interested in working with us. So we're constantly trying, but to make sure our residents are taken care of and safe, we had to plan thoroughly and thoughtfully with our staff of 100 over the last number of years to put the building blocks in place. So when it does come to decision-making time, and they have not been willing to come to the table, that we are adequate and ready to protect our residents. And so we've had to be forced to go to that step. Our hands are still out to Long Lake to work with them, but with 6%, and they won't work with us unless they can veto whatever we do, it just doesn't make any sense. But we're still willing to work with them at any time, in any place. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
First of all, let me say that public safety is perhaps the most important thing a city's government can provide. And for the safety of our citizens, we have to get this right and keep politics and preconceived notions out of our decision-making process. I am a data-driven decision maker, and I look forward to studying the data, but I can't believe the data will show that it's cost-effective for us to have separate fire departments with between Long Lake and Orono. And from what I've learned about fire service, the trend is going the exact opposite of forming our own departments. So I think we need to call in public input and outside expertise to help us make these decisions, and that really does not appear to be what has been happening in prior decision making by the City Council. So really what we need to push forward with is a fire district and working with our neighbors. And I look forward to doing so as the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Next question. Over the past 10 years, the tax dollars collected by the City of Orono have essentially doubled. Please explain your views on city budgeting and how tax rates should be set when our property values continue to increase. StevePersian.
Yeah, well, the truth is I'm sort of new to the game of tax rates and tax dollars. And when you start reading about the information and you actually go into your file at home, pull out your tax statement and realize that your tax rate may not have changed, but the amount you're paying in real dollars goes up 60%. It's eye-opening. And then we hear about the fact that we've been able to fund roads and fund this and fund this. And the truth is, when home values go up and dollars go up, you can fund a lot. And I think that other cities have taken maybe a little bit of a different approach, which has said, how can we mitigate that and possibly lower our tax rate, not cut into our reserve to do a lot of the things that are being done. So I think that if we look at this and we see this kind of growth, I think it's important that tax dollars are more talked about than tax rate when it comes to taxes in the city.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
I am not new to the tax game. That's something that I've dove in and learned a lot about in the last year and a half. We avoid assessments and franchise fees by maintaining our current tax rate while strategically leveraging our bond, which is a critical approach that ensures we can continue to invest in our future. By keeping our tax rate stable, we offer predictable and financial security to residents. By leveraging our bonding authority, we are allowed to make the necessary investments in our city's infrastructure, public service, and community parks. Bonds are a tool that enable us to fund significant projects without having to dramatically increase taxes or use one-off assessments. By carefully managing our bonds, we can finance these important initiatives over time, and we have secured a bonding rate under 2%. As the community grows and evolves, we must ensure that we don't shy away from startup costs and that we think long-term with our planning. Thank you.
Thank you. Just so the audience knows, the time for questions has elapsed, so it will not be taking any additional questions. All right, Scott Wellman.
I'm not sure. I mean, I see on one hand, it is true that the tax rate was not changed. On the other hand, there's truth that the volume has increased. I don't know that that's an automatic mandate for spending, but until I know more about what that spending was, I'm not saying it's good or bad. Recently the reserve percentage was lowered. My question, I didn't go that it was good or bad. I want to know why. Was it to pay a bond? Was it to do capital investment? Well, I'm sure there was reasons, and I'm assuming they were good reasons for the good of Orono, but until I understand more of that, I can't make judgments.
All right, thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Simply comparing our tax rate with our neighboring communities really makes little sense when you look at how enormous our tax base is compared to our neighbors, 2 to 3 times that of our neighboring communities. So in reality, we need to look at how much taxes have been paid to Orono, and that's gone up over 80% during the current mayor's term. My own taxes payable to Orono have gone up over 100% since 2018. And even that is not enough to fund all of the wasteful spending. Our cash reserves, as Scott pointed out, at the end of the year, each year have always been about 50%. Last year, they were around 37%. And at the most recent council meeting, they just voted to reduce the required reserves even further. So that shows you what might be heading our way at the end of this year. If we really want to compare ourselves to other communities, take a look at my website where there's been a deep dive into the taxes, and it will show that our taxes are increasing much faster than our neighboring cities. And as property values have risen, nearly every other city has dropped their rates. We have kept them the same in order to increase taxes.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
Well, I find it interesting that at the beginning, the mayor told us that there was no money in the city, yet he found money for the parks and the infrastructure and the roads without raising taxes. So where did that money come from? Well, that came from an increase in property values without the mill rate changing. So you can say he never raised taxes, but without that mill rate changing, our taxes went up. In the past, our mayors have lowered that mill rate so that the amount of taxes that we were paying stayed stable. That is not what the current administration's policy is. It has not changed the mill rate, which is correct, but with the property value increase, they've been able to collect more money.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, first of all, we've got the best bond rating in the United States. And when on your tax statement, if you actually look at it, you're paying 3 things: city, school, and Hennepin County. If you're paying $2,000 to the City of Orono in round numbers, you're paying $4,000 to the school district, and you're paying $4,000 to Hennepin County. We're actually a very small part. We're actually 30% less than the Hennepin County average. The school board is 30% higher than the average. If you live in Mound or Long Lake and you pay $2,000, that same house of value where you're paying $2,000 in Orono, you're paying $4,000. So yes, let's talk about real taxes. you are paying half of all your surrounding communities. We are the best managed, best financed, most efficient government. We have been working for 10 years with all of my financial expertise, with our council and our staff who have been amazing and who have helped us get all through that. And we will continue to do that for the next 4 years, funding everything and being the best tax rate around.
Thank you. Next question. The Star Tribune editorial board called for the Minnesota State Auditor to investigate the City of Orono and its fiscal management of funds. Two major expenditures, expenses tied to the creation of the new fire department, as well as the over-budget expenses of the new Orono Public Works building, raised concerns regarding the City Council's ability to responsibly manage city budgets and funds. How will you respond to these concerns? Maria Veach.
Thank you. I think our city budgets are public. They're put out the same time every year on a predictable cycle that you can follow along with. I think some of it is the education of the process of the city budgets. And I've been working towards explaining that, inviting people to come to our work sessions where you can learn about it. A lot of what you hear about the costs and transparency are done in our work sessions that are open to the public. Transparency and sharing project costs is essential, especially for long-term projects that span nearly 6 years for most of them, well beyond a single term on council. It's critical to provide clear updates for projects as we move throughout the different phases, from planning to documenting preliminary budgets and ultimately approving budgets. By establishing thoughtful and consistent process, we can guarantee no matter who serves on council will maintain the necessary level of communication and clarity to make informed decisions about Orono's future. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
I currently work in cybersecurity. It is quite common to hire external assessors to come in and review things. It is no reflection to the internal people. It just gives a chance to avoid even the appearance of conflict of interest, bring other points of view, and raise the trust on the results. It can be a chance to compare what was initially projected to what really happened and what might happen in the future. So maybe it is time to have external assessors come in, see what works, what could be better, update estimates, and have a second set of eyes to review everything and give independent professional advice.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yeah, I agree with Scott. I think we should have the auditor come in and take a look at it. I don't think we have been very at all transparent in our budgeting and in our decision making with respect to the larger projects such as the fire department and the public works facility. I went back to the council minutes back when the public works facility was first being discussed. And it was talked about as being, is increasing the size by 20%. And somehow we ended up with a building that is 250% larger than our current facility. So I think there's plenty of room to improve in terms of our public transparency, especially with respect to these big projects. The other thing that was mentioned when the council first discussed this was that they weren't going to bond for the facility, and yet $16 million worth of bonds were sold to pay $13 million toward that facility.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, it seems a few of you people up here are very misinformed. We have external auditors every year that go through all of our books. You can't hide anything in city finance. And our public works building is only double the size because the one we have is surrounded by swamps, and we have more divisions. We have a parks division that we never had. We have a fleet maintenance division we never had. And what we did great with the public works bonding, it was an amazing thing. All the short-term bonding that they were using over the years, when I got in, we paid off over 5 or 6 years, and we put it all, we kept them all in the books, and then we used that same payments to actually pay for the payments for the public works facility. So it didn't cost us anything. We have a public works facility that now houses us with all the things that we need to do with our divisions, with an additional land for additional $25,000 if we need it in the future, and it'll bring us out for the next 100 years. So we are setting Orono up for the future, long-term, for the residents, and that's what you should do, and that's what we have done. Thank you.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, I think this issue is clearly wrapped around financial transparency, and it was talked about. I think that one of the things that I would like to bring to the council is more of a proper methodology to allowing the public to understand what's going on. When I drove past on the bypass to see what was building there, I had no idea for a year. I go to coffee up at Blackwater and talk to people, they had no idea what was being built. And I don't think it's because their heads were in the sand. I think that a lot of times there's just a methodology that doesn't get the word out. I read the papers and whatnot, and it was very difficult to understand what was going on there. Then all of a sudden you start to learn more about the fire department and the expenses going on with that. And the millions of dollars being spent on capital, and the planned millions of dollars being spent on stations. And there is no public comment, there's no transparency that really is taking place to make these decisions.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I guess I'd have to go back even farther. Like, when was there even talk of the need for a brand new public works building? And why did we need to expand it? And then I, like Steve, watched this building being built. I thought it was a new Amazon transfer station. And I couldn't figure out how they got zoning there, but I had no idea. It wasn't in the happenings that we get sent. It wasn't in the newspaper. It wasn't anywhere. So I really find it hard to believe that there's any transparency in any of this. That's a huge, huge building. It's beautiful. I had a tour of it the other day. To me, it was unnecessary, and I just think that the fiscal irresponsibility of the council just shows through that project alone.
Thank you. All right, the next question, I guess, deals with transparency. How should the city council obtain and consider community input regarding major city decisions? Specifically address the public comment opportunities at city council meetings and your view on how these should be incorporated into the meetings. Dennis Walsh.
Can you repeat the question again?
How should the city council obtain and consider community input regarding major city decisions? Specifically address the public comment opportunities at city council meetings and your views on how these should be incorporated into the meetings.
Well, the good news is we do have public comments at Orono City Hall at our council meetings. In terms of public input, we listen to public input all the time. We have got our happenings thing that actually does have all of the stuff that's going on, including the Public Works facility. That's got to be one of the best, proudest things that Orono should be proud of that we've got, is expanding things like that. We're always looking for input, and we've been doing it for 6 years with fire department. We also had it when we had the Mound Fire, or when Mound got rid of their police department. We had some there. We have parks listening sessions all the time. So we're constantly listening. We're trying to do public-private partnerships, has been a mainstay of what we started 8 years ago with all our different parks, with all the grants we can get, with the associations we can get, the donations we get, because we have a great, wonderful Orono people here, and we get feedback from them all the time. And then as business people that we have got on the council who are actually fabulous as well, we take all that input and we make the best decisions for the city of Orono, and it shows with all the things that we've been able to do over the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
Thank you. I think this is a very important topic and one that's been debated. I think public comment, whether at the end or the beginning, is probably not the right time if you're really looking to drive impact. If you want your voice heard, it is a great way to get on the record. Many of these topics we address well before the meeting. We get 50, 75-page packets a week before to prepare for the meeting. To thoughtfully be able to engage where a direct comment is not included in public comment. It's a I talk, you talk format. If you really want engagement to share insights, I believe that's going to be done well before the meeting. Staying informed brings me back to the communication and why I think that's the biggest initiative we should face and look into, because being informed well in advance so I can look into the answers, talk to the city, get our city staff looking into your questions, and then thoughtfully answer. That's what I think. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
I would like to see two changes related to each other. There is time for public comments in the city council, and I've watched some online. I went to a couple, and I had anticipated that they would be part of the minutes. They're not. I'm not sure why, but I would like to see them listed out. It's easier to search for them, read them, than faster than watching the video after. And then that continues. I would like some sort of, completed loop. People get up, they put themselves out there, they speak at the council meeting, and even the rule says the council has to not answer and come back and think about that. I expect that the next council meeting, maybe some of those could be completed, fed back one by one.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I feel there's a severe lack of public comment being allowed right now, and certainly addressed, as Scott would say. I think the fact that we have had these huge projects go on without any public input shows that it isn't being implemented. I understand that communication is a very important thing, and it's something that a lot of different businesses have to deal with all the time. And being that you guys know that this is an issue, I would think that you would do everything you could to make sure that that word gets out, that communication is key to things happening in Orono. We are a small community. There's 8,000 people. There shouldn't be that hard to share information with us.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Yeah, let me be clear that public input would be sought and listened to if I'm elected your mayor. And, public comment needs to be moved to the beginning of the meeting before you're making decisions instead of after those decisions have been made. That's just basic common sense. One of the things that hasn't been addressed here yet is the overuse of the consent agenda. From my years of service on the board, consent agendas are used only for routine things that don't require discussion. But I went back and took a look at a council meeting I attended on September 26, 2022, while I was still on the Orono School Board. I was there to do a brief presentation on our technology levy that was hoping to raise $1 million, but we had to go to the taxpayers for it. On the consent agenda that night were the following multi-million-dollar spending issues: reduce the debt levy requirement, 2014 bond, reject 2023 Long Lake Fire Department capital budget, notice of intent to establish a fire department, and the Public Works Facility Award. Those things should not be on the consent agenda, and that would change under my administration.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, when it comes to community input, I think that it's been discussed already, but moving public comments to the end of a meeting doesn't seem to really provide the right venue for allowing the public to have comments. In addition to that, there's been other methods that have been tried, whether it's coffee with the mayor or whatnot, and those don't seem to be all that effective either. What I would tell you is that we are elected to be servant leaders in this community. It is our responsibility to listen to the community and to give them all the opportunity to speak on behalf of projects, big and small, individual projects, whatever they are. And I think that that simply is not going on right now. There might be time allocated, but listening is not taking place. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Next question. Working with others. Please give examples of how you've been able to work productively with those who do not share your opinions. Jacqueline Ricks.
I have been in several different boards, and we have dealt sometimes with having to have conflicts and disagreements, but you sit and talk to people about what their opinions are, and you share what your opinions are, and you work back and forth until you come to some sort of conclusion. Maybe sometimes you have to walk away and come back a little later, but there should be compromise. But I think the most important thing is that we need to listen to one another and acknowledge that what we have heard and make sure that they have heard what we have to say. It's as simple as that, a back and forth.
StevePersian.
Well, I think on the council it's paramount to be able to work with one another. And oftentimes we're faced with interacting with people in various settings, whatever they might be, that have a different opinion. And the truth is, there's value in that. I coach with a staff of people, and I want them to have and bring forward differences of opinion. It makes our coaching staff and our team stronger. It's the same situation with the council. You can do that with respect, and you can do that and really actually put together the right product and make the right decision. I see some of the things taking place with the way that the council acts, and if it was a 12-year-old behaving that way, you would stop them and say, that's not okay. What I observe sometimes with the council is nobody stepping up saying, stop that, that's not okay. And that's what I would do.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
After 16 years of marriage, raising kids, and running a family business, I've learned that conflict isn't just common, it's healthy. Sharing your thoughts on process strengthens relationships, even in disagreements. For me, it's about open communication, listening to all sides, and finding solutions that work for everyone. When handled well, conflict can lead to growth and better understanding. I support utilizing work sessions effectively to allow time for council topics to be discussed in the length they deserve, which helps our regular meetings run smoothly and effectively. Avoiding conflict often leads to unresolved tension. By leaning in, we can address issues directly, identifying underlying causes, and find lasting solutions, preventing future problems. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
So I'm in my 37th year of practicing law as a business lawyer. So I negotiate contracts for a living and have negotiated thousands of them. The way you do that effectively is to listen to the other side, figure out what they are, where they are coming from and where they want to end up. And by doing that, I think you can resolve a lot of conflicts just by listening and talking and telling them the things that they are looking for. And tell them the things that you were looking for. And there's always room for compromise and always room to get to a situation that is acceptable. Maybe not it's ideal, but it's acceptable to each side. So that's a skill set that I would bring to the council. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, collaboration and common sense are the things that are working every day. I've been in multiple businesses I've owned for the last 40 years, and right currently in my commercial real estate business, I've got 650 tenants. And that's what I was doing all morning, is collecting rent, dealing with people who can't pay, why they can't pay, why they can't get out, issues, and we solve those every day. Got to solve 20 or 30 on a daily basis. And that's what we do also at the city, whether it's with our police or our public works. We work with numbers of cities, and we always work at that. I've been, just this last week, I was up at Casco Point in a couple of houses where they had some issues with staff, saying that they're not treating them well. And I go up there and I say, well, I'll come out and look at exactly what the issue is, because I do real estate for the last 40 years and can help solve some of these things. And sometimes you can't solve them, sometimes you can solve them, but I think what people appreciate is the common sense of, here's why we can't do it, but here's what we can do on something else. And as your mayor, constantly that I'm doing, I will continue to do that for the next 4 years, because common sense and collaboration is everything that we do as we move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
At one point in my career, I was a manager of about 40 people. The most important thing I did echoes what has already been said. I set aside an hour every month for every person. Not all of them chose to use that hour, but I went in with no agenda. I went in to actively listen. As they said things, I fed them back to make sure I understood. But mostly I just listened and made sure that even if I couldn't fix the problem, they could understand why I couldn't fix the problem once it was time for me to talk, as opposed to trying to correct them or change their minds. Because at the end of the day, we have to make the decisions, and of course not everybody will agree, but if everybody understands why we got there, it's an improvement.
Thank you. All right, in the issue of transparency, your moderator is in trouble for skipping over question 9, so we're going to go back and do question 9. Lake Minnetonka and the public lands of Orono currently face significant environmental threats that have accompanied the growth of residential and commercial development over the past 7 decades. What steps will you take to address these challenges and protect the integrity of Lake Minnetonka and Orono's public lands while balancing the needs of local residents and businesses? Bob Tunheim.
Well, my wife and I moved to Lake Minnetonka a few years ago, and as I said earlier, it is our crown jewel in our community. We have to do all we can to protect it. Does that mean we can't do any commercial development along there? No, of course not. But we need to be very careful about it. And I don't sense that the current council spends a lot of time talking about environmental issues. In fact, I never hear it brought up in meetings. So I think that would be a focus to make sure that we are protecting our natural resources and not just building, houses right next to each other all the way along the lake shore. It is our most valuable resource, and we only have so much land, as the moderator said, so we need to protect it.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
I would make sure to look at the environmental impact studies and make sure that environmental impact is important and considered for any relevant question. An environmental impact is both water use, sewage, also noise. We have a quiet place here. I like it. That's one of the reasons we moved, beyond the opportunities for my family. And I would like to see that kept. So that would be in the forefront. And I think with feedback, I think that would resonate with a lot of people. They also like it reasonably quiet.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I think one of the things we have to talk about is how we are relating to the other communities that also share if we're talking about Lake Minnetonka, that also share the lake with us, because the other cities do also have different policies and different variances than we do. I think that anytime a project comes on, especially with Lake Minnetonka, that we have to be sure that we stay true to our variances and rules that we've put into place over the years to make sure that we can indeed keep the integrity of the lake. I know I've been in meetings in the past where we've talked about someone wanted to have horses on near Lake Minnetonka. And there were variances for that, and there were rules of engagement for how much runoff you could have with your horses and stuff. So I think it's important we talk about these things, because different and odd things do come up, and it concerns our lake.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, like what's been said, I think that one of the biggest assets in this community is Lake Minnetonka. And while I've never lived on the lake, I've spent time on there. And one of the things that always stands out to me is the beauty that you see when you go around the lake. The other thing that is noticeable is when you're not on the lake, but you're on the other side. And you see some of the growth that's taking place, to some of the development. I think that one of the most important things we do for in and around this area with Lake Minnetonka is to really protect the growth that we have. We're planful about that. We maintain the natural beauty that we have. We don't compromise for development. We're planful in the way that we do develop. Thank you.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
Well, actually, if people have come to our meetings and work sessions, you find we talk about this all the time, because we are very, very supportive of making sure we're very restrictive on this stuff. We have one of the worst, I guess, we're the farthest restrictions away from the water at 75 feet. We also have said that we, in our comprehensive plan, have deferred to the experts, like the watershed district when it comes to ponds and all those kind of things. Says we don't need to be the water experts; they're the experts. So if they change their codes that make it more restrictive, we just refer right to them. Also, when it comes, we're also just had lids. We just talked about lake improvement districts, which are huge things for the lake that we're trying to get a couple more going. We're the one big supporter in Lake Minnetonka for those. And part of the big deal that we do also fund all of our water and sewer and everything is we have money when you have the ditches and the waterways that we can constantly keep them clean and taken care of, and there's no sewage runoff. That's a big one for us to make sure we take care of that. So that's one thing we don't slouch on. We're probably one of the tougher ones on the lake. You go to Mound and Long Lake and that kind of stuff, they're like 10 feet, some of these houses. We do not. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
Yeah, I'll go off of that, and Bob, to your question, we do talk about it a lot. We talk about average lakeshore setback. Recently at a work session. It's a very important topic that affects many of our residents, as we have a lot of homes that are on lakes. We also have a discussion about environmental topics like a tree management coming up here at a work session. If you're interested in something like a tree management program, please watch for that meeting coming up. I'll protect our lakeshore communities by actively collaborating with experts like the DNR, the Watershed District, and the Lake Minnetonka Conservation District to ensure that we're following the best practices for water quality. Like Denny said, we don't need to be the experts. We have experts that we can lean on. By leveraging their knowledge, we can implement sustainable solutions that balance responsible development and simplify our zoning code so we can take care of our lakeshore properties without compromising the water quality. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, it's time for our last question, and it'll go first to Scott Wellman. Is there an issue that wasn't discussed in this forum that you wish to address? Scott Wellman.
Well, it's a little mundane, but I love the wildlife here. But in the time that we've lived here, the deer population has gone from picturesque to a safety issue. I don't know exactly the provenance of the city council, because part of, if I am elected, I have a lot of learning to do in some areas. But I would like to explore options to see what can be addressed before we see more accidents. As it is, every drive between here and where we live is an accident waiting to happen.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I think the only thing that I was concerned about was the vacating of the fire lanes on Lake Minnetonka and where the land ultimately ended up. I felt like that was done without public input, and I really have to question the integrity of that move by the council. They felt like it was the right thing to do, and I guess I have a really hard time believing that that shouldn't have been addressed by all of us, since that was all, excuse me, property that was owned by Orono.
Thank you. Dennis Walsh.
I guess we could talk all night. We had a town hall meeting, a mayoral meeting over at the Lafayette Club about a week and a half ago, and I just got to sit by myself and talk for about an hour. So I had lots of conversations that if there's a website you can go to look at that, I'd be glad to share it with people and have more of a conversation. You know, there's a few fun facts. You know, Orono, we always are happy and proud to say that we're this 2-acre community. And we are. We're a very large community. We're 16 square miles. If you go to Mound, just as an example, they're the same population. They have 3 square miles. We're 5 times their size. Long Lake has 1 square mile. What does that mean for Orono? It means we have that much more roads, that much more water, sewer, that much more wear and tear in our public works, snow plowing, and we still fund it all. And you pay half as much for the same value as everybody else around you. We are efficient and well done, and we have a great council that's done it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
I know we've talked about civility in several, with respect to several questions here, but one of the issues that we really haven't talked about is beyond council meetings. And civility needs to really rule the day in everything that we do. I avoid social media, but people will share what is said, and I don't care who is being slammed. We need to condemn the personal insults. Our society is becoming more rude and obnoxious, and we all suffer. We're seeing it at council meetings, but we're also seeing it in our discourse among our citizens. And I think that's something that we can all do better at. There was a PAC set up by a political action committee set up by my opposition that put out an awful piece that questions my character. And I just learned about a social media post that slammed a firefighter and his family. All of it has to stop. And I think our city council can lead the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
I think the question was, what question were you hoping to hear? And I guess my question that I was hoping to hear is, what's your why? Unlike others that didn't aspire maybe to serve and felt the recent need to, I felt driven to serve this community. I'm running for the city council position because I believe in our community and the power that serving has in our community. I'm running to maintain fiscal responsibility. I'm running to support public safety in both approach and funding. I'm running to improve communications by addressing the opportunity and developing a sustainable approach that can achieve consistency. I'm running to maintain one of the lowest tax rates in Hennepin County while strategically leveraging our bonding authority to prepare us for the future. I'm running to proactively educate citizens on city process and encourage civic engagement. I'm running because I understand the role, I understand there is work to be done, and I'm ready and willing to do it.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Well, I think there's two issues that I thought we might hear this evening. The first is how do we think that we can change the civility and the relationships that we have with surrounding communities? And I don't think that question came up. I think that it is at a very, it's at a real low right now with what I'm observing and the way that other communities talk about us, with the way that we interact with other communities around us, with the fact that we're breaking relationships with them and we're not concerned about collaborating with them, whether it's in public works, or I'm sorry, not public works, with public safety. The other question that I thought we may get is, with the rash of community or criminal incidents and break-ins happening around the city, has the City of Orono started to consider different opportunities for residents and streets to improve safety, whether it be allowing for controlled access on roads? I think that with this type of spike in activity, we need to be thinking differently about safety. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I will now call on each of you for your closing statement, beginning with Dennis Walsh.
First of all, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Thank you for the league for coming. Thank you for my lovely wife for showing up as well. I know she had to come from a meeting. Some of the personal stuff I guess I did say, I've got 4 children. I live on the lake. I've got a dog named Lucy. I've lived here for 20 some odd years. I grew up in St. Louis Park. Like I said, I've started and ran numerous businesses over the last 40 years. I've got a lot of financial expertise and management expertise. Then I brought those talents with me here to Orono. And some of the things that we talked about a little bit earlier about how large we are, with all the extra roads that we have. We don't do any assessments. You pay half of what you do versus the neighboring communities, and you should be very proud of that. I wanted to run 10 years ago because I ran into problems when I was doing building in my house. And that's why it was called Orono. And I vowed I was going to bring yes back to Orono. And we have helped people be able to streamline the system with technology, which we never had. Builders can get in here and they can actually do stuff. That's why values have gone so well. We increased our revenue with all of our permits. We cut by 2/3 what it costs for actually to do variances. And of course our staff said, well, we're not gonna make as much money then. I said, we'll make it up in volume. And we did. We made it up in volume. And we're gonna continue to do that moving forward with making good, economical, wise business decisions. We have a great council. We have an absolute fabulous staff in Orono. Everybody should be proud of the staff that we have. They're dedicated, all the way from our city administrator to the person at the front desk with a smile. They know who our residents are. They know who they serve. And we will continue that great foundation of what we have for the next 4 years with your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Veach.
Thank you. I'm running for City Council to build on the strong foundation of our community, a place where neighborhoods, families, and individuals thrive. My experience as a wife, a mother, a business owner, an Orono graduate, combined with years of volunteer work and various community initiatives, have given me a unique perspective to guide Orono's future. My deep-rooted commitment to Orono sets me apart, demonstrated by my involvement as chair of Corn Days, my work in community and professional boards, my involvement in youth sports, as well as my involvement serving on subcommittees to support the Orono schools. Additionally, my hands-on experience with council matters such as budgeting, staffing, and local governance, as well as my work that I do in my career, running a business with my family. My hands-on experience and my work experience built me for this position. With your support, I am dedicated to ensuring that our city continues to prosper for generations to come. I am dedicated to ensuring that our city continues to prosper and grow and stay true to who we are. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight and share my vision for the community. It's been a privilege to serve, and I am sincerely grateful for the support of the residents. I believe that our future and community outlook is bright. I humbly ask for your vote this November so I can continue this meaningful work. Thank you.
Thank you. Jacqueline Ricks.
I'd like to say thank you for this forum tonight. It's been very civil and I think very informative. Thank you to everybody who showed up tonight. I know that there's a Lynx game and also a vice presidential debate going on, so I appreciate everyone being here. I am the mother of 4 children. I'm married to my husband, Michael. We moved to Orono when Cargill moved us here. I love Orono. In fact, when we went to Switzerland for 4 years between 2014-18, we kept our house to move back to it. We have fabulous neighbors, some of which are here tonight, and we wanted to come back to that. I had never thought about running for the council. I was approached this summer by some friends about running, and I have to say that I feel like I was called to it. I have been in numerous boards, both with the YMCA, the Orono Hockey Board, Freedom Farm, which is a therapeutic riding, and I feel that I'm here to serve the community because I feel like it's serving half the community right now, and the other half is mad as hell because of the way that they've been treated. I hope that you will consider a vote for me for some change and some civility. I think everybody should be heard, and I want people to know that they've been heard. I've been trained in conflict resolution. Hopefully I won't have to use that too much, but I do hope to be able to join the council and be a positive influence on it as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Scott Wellman.
I'm running for a chance to give service. I'm bringing an ability to analyze data, process information, weigh pros and cons, and listen to public input. I'm bringing concepts of safety and awareness, and the awareness of the struggle that with a limited budget, we have to balance interests, needs, and access. I'm bringing some ideas on how to potentially change some conversations, breaking down some apparent deadlock. I'm bringing 24 years of corporate experience where I've learned many applicable skills, such as bid management review, risk analysis, and perhaps more importantly, the ability to actively listen. In summary, I'm bringing a willingness to serve and to apply my skills to the collective challenges we as residents of Orono face. Thank you.
Thank you. StevePersian.
Like a couple of people said, thank you so much for coming this evening and taking the time to listen to what we have to say. I'm running because I believe we need change. And when I think about what's taken place over the last couple of years, and what I've observed at city council meetings, I think that it's the biggest thing we need is a number of changes. I think a couple are easy. I think it's very easy to be more kind. I think it takes a lot of work to be mean, and I've seen a lot of mean things going on recently. I think that it's easy to be transparent. It's easy to ask for public input, and I think people want that. I think that we can do that. I think that when it comes to some of the other topics that were discussed tonight, I have a lot to learn. because I don't know a lot about what takes place with city government. But I think that I'm willing to learn and be a servant leader to do that. When I think people buy a home, wherever they buy a home, I'll talk about the fire department. I don't think the first thing that comes to mind is who's my fire department. I think what comes to mind is when I call 911, I'm going to get someone to show up at a reasonable time with reasonable equipment, and they're reasonably trained. And I think over the course of the last couple of years, we've taken and put firefighters in the middle of a mess. And there's firefighters here today, and I thank you for your service. It's not what you should be having to deal with at all. I think that when you start to put numbers to it, I'll share a couple numbers. Orono was budgeted over $1 million for fire service in Navarre. Long Lake said they could do it for $68,000. That's not a good business decision. I would appreciate your vote. I support Jacqueline, and I certainly support Bob for mayor. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Bob Tunheim.
Thank you so much, as everybody has said, to the League of Women Voters for hosting this, and thank you to the many concerned citizens that have come out tonight. Despite the conflict with the vice presidential debate, as I told the organizers on the way in, I'm a little bit surprised that they went ahead with the VP debate knowing that we had already scheduled this tonight, right? But in all seriousness, it is an honor to be seeking public office. And as your mayor, I would pledge to do the following. First, bring back civility, accountability, respect for all points of view. We've lost the trust of our own citizens by not involving them in decision-making and shouting down anyone opposed to the council's decisions. And more importantly, perhaps, we've also lost the trust of virtually all of our neighboring communities. We have to get that back. We're a small community, and we need to have good working relationships with our neighbors. I would work to immediately repair those broken bonds. Second, we need to restore fiscal responsibility. As has been pointed out tonight, our taxes have skyrocketed under the current mayor, up over 80%, and even that is not enough to fund all of the wasteful spending. Our debt has doubled in the past year, and our user fees that we pay for water, sewer, and stormwater are up 80 or 70% in my case, and we aren't even on city water. And as has been mentioned, our reserves are dwindling. As your mayor, I will do all I can to eliminate wasteful spending, ensure we are taxing for only what we need, and are transparent about that. Third, we need to ensure our public safety is never compromised. This means fully funding and supporting our police, fire, and EMT. In closing, as one of my former colleagues on the Orono School Board said, happens to be here tonight, sometimes the needs of a community and the skill set of a candidate match perfectly. Now is one of those times, and I appreciate your vote on November 5th. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, bear with, the moderator has a closing too. This concludes the Orono Mayor and City Council Candidate Forum. We close with several thank yous. First, on behalf of the League of Women Voters, please join me in thanking the candidates for being part of the democratic process by running for office and for being willing to serve your community. Thank you also to the League of Women Voter Volunteers, our audience here, and those viewing this event virtually for your participation in this candidate forum. Thank you to the City of Orono, Orono School District, and Orono High School staff for supporting this event, and CCX Media for recording tonight's forum. On-demand viewing can be accessed at lwvwpa.org. For additional election information, we encourage you to visit vote411.org, the League of Women Voters award-winning one-stop shop where voters can register to vote, find their polling place, and learn how candidates stand on issues. Please remember to vote in the November 5th election by absentee ballot or in person. On the November ballot, Minnesota voters will be asked to reauthorize or end a constitutional amendment allocating 40% of state lottery proceeds to the Environmental and Natural Resources Trust Fund. Over 50% of voters must vote yes to approve constitutional protection of the system. Leaving the question blank counts as a no vote, just so you know. Please be sure to look for the amendment and read about it and vote. Early voting begins this Friday, September 20th. I guess it has. Your vote is your voice. LWV welcomes new members, both men and women, at lwvwpa.org. Thank you and good night.